Insidious The Red Door is one of the most disappointing, not scary films I have ever seen. This is horrendous. This is the latest Insidious film released this year in 2023, directed by Patrick Wilson, and I was looking forward to this so much. I've spent the last 2 weeks watching Insidious 1 to 4, and because I rank those either 4-3-2-1 or 4-2-3-1, they generally got better as they went along. So I thought, okay, well, that's a trend that's going to continue. The fifth film is going to be amazing because by this point they've fine-tuned it, they know what works, they know what characters work. And when I realised that the fifth film was actually set however many years, I think 9 years after the first films, I thought, okay, this is going to be interesting. I liked the characters introduced in the first film. Maybe they can make it work. Nah, no, they can't. It's absolutely horrific. Nothing happens for 40 minutes. Absolutely nothing happens. And then once things do start to happen, it's so boring. And honestly, not scary. Now, I find, being a seasoned horror fan, it takes a lot to scare me. But the other Insidious films, even the first one, which up until this point I thought was the weakest, but now that title goes to this film. But even the first one made me feel quite scared in places, or at least apprehensive and tense. This one I felt nothing but boredom. Dalton has gone to college, and Josh, his father, drives him there, and I think maybe they were trying to do this whole father-son. They'd gone through this experience together, but now there's a wedge between them. They don't really remember what happened. Will we be able to reignite those memories, and will it bring them closer together? I think that's what they were trying to do, but what we got was just an hour and 40, maybe an hour and 50 minutes of what I've explained to you. Basically, nothing else happens. Dalton is a keen artist. He sees this red door, and he draws it, and yeah, that was quite interesting. But that's literally the most interesting thing that happens. The scene where he's in the art class, and the art teacher, quite early on in the film, asks them to pick up the charcoal and draw something from within, and he draws this door, and it's quite an intense minute or so. And after that, it just became really boring, and I thought it was terrible. Chris, as a character, played by Sinclair Daniel, is an interesting character, but she doesn't add really any value to the story. I think she was brought in so that it had a slightly different feel to the first film. She brings in quite a bit of comedy. She's got a very interesting way of talking, and I think her lines were very well written and well delivered. But they tried to make it almost flippant with her scenes. It gets darker a little bit with her, but it's like they're almost saying, we haven't got a good narrative, so we're going to bring in some comedy. And it just feels cheap and corny. And I'm trying to think of anything that was scary in this. The only thing that comes even close to being scary is when Josh was getting a scan. And he's in I think, an MRI machine. And it wasn't scary, but it was loud and uncomfortable and unsettling. That I hated. That genuinely made me feel sick. But it didn't make me feel scared. It just made me feel uncomfortable. It's one of the tamest horrors I've ever seen. And even if we're not looking for something scary, but we're looking for a clever narrative, that's not there. If you've seen the first film, you've basically seen this film. It doesn't add anything. And part of me is wondering if Insidious relies quite heavily on Elise as a character. And that's why those films work really well. And I'm beginning to think that actually that might be the case. Because Elise doesn't have a prominent role in this. And that's what's missing. And maybe Insidious just needs Elise. So I'm slightly devastated that I made the decision to pay, I think, $15.99 to rent this. Ordinarily, because I watch a lot of films, a lot of my money goes on to films. I try not to pay to rent films as soon as they come out. I can tend to wait until they're either cheaper or on one of the streaming sites. But because I just watched the other 4 Insidious films and was really desperate to see this, and the others had increased as they went on, I thought it'd be completely worth it. It's the worst 16-ish pound I've ever spent on a film, ever. I regret every penny. It is one of the worst films I've ever seen. And I don't know what the reception is. I've not read any other reviews because I've just watched this and then I'm recording this immediately after. But I hope that this is the end of Insidious because they've proven that they don't know how to move forward. They've proven that they can only move backwards, as we get with the prequels, which when I watched the prequels, I thought this was, um, a bad idea. They should move forward. But no, they've proven that that was the right decision to make with the prequels and that they just can't come up with a good new story that moves things forward. I hope that this is the end, or at least we get prequels and we get focus on Elise, because without her, it could work, maybe with the right team involved, but unfortunately, that's not the case with Insidious 5 or Insidious the Red Door. The acting's fine, and as I said, I think Chris was a well written character, but I don't think she was in the right narrative. I don't think this was the story for that character. So unfortunately, it's just a whole lot of nothing, and I've wasted a lot of money. Well, not reasonable. I could have spent that money on a different film, put it that way. And I regret it completely. Definitely not worth anything. If you've seen the first Insidious film, you've seen Insidious the Red Door. Maybe if you're a fan of Insidious and this goes on to Prime or Netflix or whatever, I'm not sure what the plan is for it, but when it's available as part of a streaming site you're already paying for, maybe give it a go. But if you've been wondering if it's worth the money, it isn't. It's not worth the time, it's not worth the money. It really is a tremendous, tremendous disappointment.